All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. S- um, Wendy. All right. All right, guys, welcome back. This is BlueCapCyberSecurity. This is BlueCapCyberSecurity. So, previously we've been looking at the first half of cyber attack in retrospect, and we looked at some of the few. We look at the major ones that happened in 2026. So we said 89% were AI enabled attacks year over year. 89% of these attacks were AI powered. Then 47 were rise in ransomware incident reports year over year, and 91% of successful breaches started with phishing. This could be most likely going to be phishing email. The first on the list is the nation state geopolitical attacks that was actually what sponsored. It was sponsored by, it was believed that it was sponsored by a government group, which is the Striker, that affected a medical technology company in the US, and it was still sponsored by the Iranian activist group. The second was the European Commission, whereby uh, it was all this particular was unattributed, so we didn't actually know those that actually carried this attack did not claim responsibility. The fourth was the Poland energy grid and water utilities. This happened the one for the Poland energy grid happened in January 2026, while the one for the water utility happened in May 2026. So it was linked to Electrum, activist, a Russian activist group. And the next was the FBI surveillance system, which was actually what linked to allege that it was linked to China state actors. And you know what the FBI means. Followed by that was the Dodge Social Security Administration uh, that was associated with an internal whistleblower. It was alleged that it was an internal whistleblower that actually what uh, that whispered this attack being ongoing. So as we did not actually know whom were those that were actually what, responsible for this attack. Then the next now, which we're going to be continuing with, is the DIA link key. So the DIA link key so the DIA linking we actually have is is a German organization, a political party in Germany, and this particular breach that happened to them happened in March 2026. It was also linked with a Russian linked ransomware that was responsible for carrying out this particular attack. And the root cause, or what was the harm and the loss that was actually what caused by this particular uh, incident. The party shut down part of Germany's IT system to contain damage. And the framed by the party as a hybrid warfare operation. That means, what was the root cause? Inadequate ransomware defense for a political targeted organization. Inadequate ransomware defenses for a politically targeted organization. Now, what could have been prevented? Specific threat intelligence for political and advocacy group plus tested offline backups. You see, there is no way that we can actually talk about. We cannot overemphasize the place of offline backups, especially data that will be needed continually over time, and they could be corrupted. There is no way we can talk about it too much, or we can't overemphasize offline backups. We must continue to sensitize people about offline backups, because that is where your strength lies when anything happens to even your cloud infrastructure. If anything should happen to it, maybe your data were encrypted using a ransomware approach, or they were deleted using a method of grab and expunge operation by this group of adversaries or group of activists or whatever. It is only a tested offline backup that could actually be your backbone, or be your strength as a way of recovering from this kind of attack. So that was what this particular group did not do that made them to experience such kind of losses. So let's proceed to the next category, which are the ransomware and extortion. Ransomware and extortion. This kind of is category two of the attack that actually happened in 2026. I believe nobody actually will be new, unless maybe you are new to cyber attacks. That's where you will not know what ransomware actually means. So criminal extortion groups hitting education, telecom, food distribution, manufacturing, and consumer brands. But before I go into the 7 incidents that were actually examined in this particular retrospect, lecture in retrospect, or incident in retrospect, is let me just explain something. You can just, you woke up one morning, you open, it's more common with computer devices, desktop computers, and the rest of them. You just see a screen presented to you on your laptop that your data have been encrypted, and for you to unlock it or for you to have access to those data, you will need to you need to pay a particular amount to a particular wallet address, which is majority of the time is usually uh, a crypto web address. And if you pay that unless you pay that particular amount, you can never access any file on your laptop again, or your PC or your desktop or whatever again. Mind you, the only thing that can save you in this scenario is that you have to format your entire laptop. So you will have a choice between paying that money and or losing all your files to form to hardware formatting. Now, some persons, there are some certain scenario that some individuals said they actually paid those money, and even though they paid those money, they never got their files back. But why many have actually said that they paid those money and they were able to access their file after paying that particular money. But majority of the time, or we can see scenario that if that particular amount that you were asked to pay, let's assume you do not have that particular money. It therefore means that all of your files will just go like that, and you have no access to them anymore, which is something bad that you shouldn't actually you shouldn't actually anticipate. So that's how ransomware extortion, that's how it actually happens. You are placed under compulsion that unless you pay this money, all of your files have been encrypted, and they are lost forever. You understand? So let's look at the first ransomware attack that actually happened. The first organization that was actually hit by this particular ransomware attack. One is Instructor slash Canvas. This is an edutech global company, early 2026, and the attack was even a repeat attack. And the people that claimed responsibility were the shiny hunters. What were the harm that was actually harm and the loss that was actually associated with this particular attack is 30 million students and staff's records were stolen. A dark web listing claimed 3.65 terabytes across 9,000 schools. Login pages were defaced during exam finals. You know what that is? That login pages of a particular school were defaced during exam final. So let's assume that maybe students from your school are trying to write their exams, and on their login page they just see whatever that your school website has been hacked. That's how defaced actually was. Your school website has been hacked by XYZ, but maybe by shiny hunters. So that's the kind of things you are going to see uh, when uh, when pages or cyber pages are actually defaced. You understand? So that's actually what happens. Then let's look at the root cause or the negligence that actually what was associated with this. Is inadequate incident response readiness. Ransom was ultimately paid despite FBI's guidance against it. You see, when students have final exams to write and time is going, even though the FBI want them not to actually what pay this particular ransom, but they actually paid it, and they they were able to get their pages back, their documents back, uh, and you know what that actually is. Now, let's continue. Now, we've seen the root negligence here, inadequate incident response readiness. You see, the best thing you can actually do as soon as you are bringing your business to the cyber place or into the digital atmosphere is that prepare, have it at the back of your mind that cyber attacks will hit you one day. It might not be next year, or you are a potential recipient of cyber attacks. You are a potential recipient of cyber attack. It could be tomorrow, could be next year, could be next 10 years, could be next 20 years, could be next 30 years, it could be next 50 years, could even be next 100 years. So with such now, with you be preparing as a potential uh preparing as a potential preparing yourself as a uh potential recipient of cyber attacks now gives you the capability and the preparedness to actually do what. I give you the ability, the preparedness to actually prepare on what to do if this particular incident should happen. That is what incident response, that is what it actually entails. Incident response simply means how are we going to recover if this kind of incident, if we are attacked through this way, if we are attacked through this way, if we are attacked through this way, how are we going to recover from it? That is what incident response is. But unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of organizations are not prepared for such. Now, what could have prevented it? A tested incident response plan, segmented immutable backups, and a pre-agreed ransom payment governance policy. They never had a pre-agreed ransom payment policy. So the organization didn't have it, and that was how they lost a lot of money. Majority of these organizations, they won't tell you how much they paid for ransomware, even though they have paid it. So let's continue with the next one, which is the charter communications. The charter communications were also experienced a ransomware attack, and the charter communication is a telecommunication company in the United States. The particular date of this attack or the month this particular organization they didn't make it open, but uh, it was also attacked. It was also attributed to the shiny hunters, same people who carried out the instructions to canvas attack that affected that, which is the previous incident we just talked about. They were the ones that also carried out this charter communication ransomware attack, and roughly 40 million of customer records were actually what exposed. What's the root cause? As at the time of preparing this lecture, the investigation is still being carried on, although maybe uh, uh, a root cause might have surfaced, but as at the time of as at the time of preparing the lecture slides or the slide for this particular lecture, the investigation was still ongoing. So, what could have prevented it? Standard telecom data protection and network monitoring protocols. Majority of companies that actually holds numerous customer records, they don't have network monitoring protocol. Network monitoring protocol is like, having a system that you can actually use to monitor uh, data of network traffic inflow and outflow, such that when some certain things happen, you you will be able to know on time that some things are going wrong, things are not going the way they ought to go, and so on and so forth. So let's continue. The next that happens, the next that accompany this is the Cisco, not the Cisco computers, but this particular Cisco is spelled SYSCO. This is a food distribution company, not the Cisco computers that that is an IT company. This one is a food distribution company, and this Cisco is spelled as SYSCO. So this is a food distribution company and the attack that actually what happened to them was a global one, and it happened in a certain way, so they will not want to admit. So what could have in a certain way, so they will not want to admit. So what could have prevented it? Rapid breach confirmation and communication protocols to control the narrative early. So that's what this particular organization did not do. So let's go to the next. The next is the Fox Communication. Fox Communication is a semiconductor manufacturing company, and this attack happened to them in May 2026, and those who were the perpetrators were the Nitrogen. They call themselves the Nitrogen. What was the harm and the loss that was caused? The incident claimed theft of over 11 million files. Apple, Google, Nvidia, and Sunset downstream in its supply chain. Factories were being disrupted, or factories were briefly disrupted. Now, when we say this is semiconductor manufacturing company, it's most likely that these companies supplies technology or supplies some kind of semiconductors to major production companies that are into IT or communication gadgets. And you can see the list of companies that were actually whom were their major or big customers. They include Apple, Google, Nvidia, and Sony. You understand? So what were the root cause or the negligence? It's unconfirmed. The negligence or the root cause was unconfirmed, and exposure amplified by a scale of downstream client relationship. Now, what could have prevented it? Supply chain wide vendor risk management, given the scale of downstream exposure. These are the things that we could have actually prevented this. Supply chain wide vendor risk management, given the scale of downstream exposure. Okay. The next on the list is MediaWorks Hungary. MediaWorks Hungary. Now, MediaWorks Hungary is a Hungarian media company that experienced their own share of these cyber attacks in May 2026. About roughly 15 million files that amounts to 8.5 terabytes were leaked on the dark web per Hungary's Data Protection Authority. The root cause is currently still being investigated as at the time of uh, preparing the materials for this particular uh, class or for this particular lecture. And the possibility that this particular attack could have been prevented is that findings were pending. Standard practice is encrypted storage and access logging for media archives. Now, what this means is that every media archive, there must be a login to read. It should not just be open like that. No, there should be a standard practice of encrypted storage, and access logging for media what for media archives. That's how this particular attack could have been averted. Okay, the next is Tata Electronics. I believe Tata is not a new company to most of us, although it might be to some persons. But Tata is a big Indian manufacturing company name, and this their own share of the cyber attack happened in June 2026, and those that were actually what responsible were the World Leaks. That's the name of the group that actually what that launched this attack against them. So 200 plus 200,000 over 200,000 company files were published online, meaning that things that were supposed to be private information to the company, things that were supposed to be classified or restricted or industrial secret to this particular company were published online, which is not a good thing. So, what is it that could have actually what prevented it? Standard ransomware hardening and network segmentation. They didn't have standard ransomware hardening and network segmentation. So this was a major thing that made this particular attack to be what to be possible. So that's for Tata Electronics. I believe you are learning, if you're watching this particular video or you're following this live, you are learning one or two things that you can actually apply to your organization if you already have one, or you have another one, or you have an existing organization that you can apply this to, or you have you are anticipating an organization and the future that you wish to apply this to in the future. You understand? So let's continue. The next on the list is Hasbro. Hasbro. Hasbro is a consumer product company in the United States, and they experienced a ransomware attack, ransomware and extortion attack in March 2026. What were the harms that were caused in this particular attack? Weeks long operational outage. They were unable to serve customers normally. Delayed in SEC filing, that's Security and Exchange Commission filing. Sustained substantial financial costs were what we actually what expected, because they have to pay for ransomware to get their files back. So substantial financial costs were expected. What's the root incidence or root negligence or the root cause? The root cause was inadequate incident response and business continuity planning. See, incident response is a major issue that major companies are not prepared for. You see, it's the reason why in our Stay Safe online course that is coming up from this July to from this July through the month of August, we have an entire module dedicated to incidents response. We have an entire module dedicated to it. Incident response. That means after a particular cyber attack has happened, let's assume you were unable to prevent it, but after it has happened, what will you do, or what are you going to do? We have it as an entire module for this course. So you should go and sign up. The link is, you can see it being displayed on the on the screen at the moment. So let's continue with our cyber attacks for 2026 first half in retrospect. So they have no incident response plan with defined recovery time objectives and a tested continuity disaster recovery plan. Yes, you see the same thing with incident response or disaster recovery plan. They had it not in place, or they didn't have it in place. So let's continue with the third kind of cyber attacks that happened in 2026 is the supply chain and third-party compromise. Supply chain and third-party compromise. Yes, what's supply chain and third-party compromise? Yes, what does it mean? Supply chain and third-party compromise. Supply chain and third-party compromise. Supply chain and third-party compromise. I want to be as detailed as possible on this particular topic, because it's, let me use the word, it's a little bit dicey in terms of its definition. Now, when we say supply chain and third-party compromise, what we are trying to say, sorry about that. What we're trying to say is that a supply chain or a third-party compromise occurs when an attacker infiltrates a third-party organization, infiltrates a target organization by exploiting a breach at a trusted vendor, a contractor, or a software partner. Because these partners often have legitimate privileged access to internal networks or data streams, attackers use them as backdoor rather than attacking the primary target directly. Let me bring a very practical scenario to this, or a scenario that will be easy for maybe persons who might be hearing this term for the first time, or who might have been hearing it for years now, but they still do not actually understand it. Let me use practical terms to actually explain it as explicit as possible. Is that attackers compromise a vendor or a third-party component. Okay, let's use say company A sells software. Yes, so with them selling software, they become a vendor. Then malicious code access is introduced in vendors' products update. So a particular group of attacker or an attacker now introduce malicious code into the updates that company A is rolling out to its users. So based on the fact that users of a particular software, they already trust the software, so they will update, they believe that this software is secured and all that. So customer who are using that product or have been using that product, they will install the update or uses vendor's product stroke update. Now the fourth thing that actually or the third thing that happens after this is that attackers use that foothold to move up or downstream to escalate privileges, they steal data, or disrupt operations. You understand? So what does this actually mean is that when they have when they impute some certain code into this vendor's product update now, remember that remember that customers already trust this vendor. So customers will still log in into this vendor's product, maybe it's a software as a service, or any other kind of service that these vendors are selling to them. So they log in, and since a code has already been introduced into this software now, they have a lot of these customer details. So based on this, a lot of customer details, now they can now go ahead and go to the main organization to inject these customer details into their own system. You understand? So because of this now, they've have users credit cards, because credit cards is majority of what they are interested in. Credit cards, maybe you are paying with SSN. No, you're mostly going to be paying with credit cards since they are vendor related issue. Username, maybe as a way of know your customer policy, which is KYC. So you're going to be uploading maybe passports or driver's license or identity cards. So all of this information are going to be collected. With this being collected, they go ahead to to the main vendor now and strikes them and tell them that, listen, we have credit cards of 200,000 of your customers. For us to not to publish this credit card of your customers, pay us XY amount of money. And if they refuse to pay, because their customers have been affected, they need to do something. So they will be pushed or be moved to do something. So that's how supply chain attack, that's how it actually happens. So I believe that if you are confused or you do not actually know what supply chain or third-party compromise actually means, all this why maybe you'll be hearing it in several places, this is the better explanation, or the best of explanation you can actually get about it. So the first company that actually suffered this is the Clue Salesforce authentication breach. This happened in between June 11 and June 12, 2026. The group that were responsible were the Icaros, and the harms that was caused and the data that was lost was Salesforce CRM data, Salesforce customer relationship management data, which include names, emails, phone numbers, sales notes, internal communication, were stolen across roughly 24 customer organizations, including HackerOne, Gong, Tanium, and Huntress. Remember, I told you that because of the fact that they've injected a particular code into uh, a software vendor's uh, update or existing software, and the users of this software already trust the owners of this software, so nobody will be concerned about using the software that he has already been paying for. So it is this, from installing those code now, they can now fetch the names, emails, phone numbers, and the rest of them from these customers. And the following customers were the ones that actually what uh, were actually uh, were affected, including HackerOne, Gong, Tanium, and Huntress. Now, the root cause were or the negligence was compromised legacy credentials misused to obtain and abuse auth taking or authentication token, weak credential lifecycle management. Those were the root cause of this particular uh, incident. And what's it that could have prevented it? What could have prevented it were authentication scoping and rotation, legacy credential depreciation, and regular third party integration audits. Yes, regular third party integration audits. So, because it was not done, hmm, these people were what? We attacked. So, let's proceed to open source tooling compromise. Open source tooling compromise. That was the third supply chain and third party compromise that happened in 2026. Software supply chain global. That is affected global users. And the people that were responsible for these attacks, they never claimed responsibility. So what was the harm that was caused? Was backdoor version of popular open source tools like Trivi, Bitwarden, checkmarks. They store credentials, they store tokens, cascading downstream into OpenAI and what? Vessel. So I think I already explained how supply chain actually. So when you see, if you look at this particular incident now, it's always affecting two companies. So Bitwarden is a password management. It's a password management platform. So because of the fact that it's a password management platform, people can use it to manage the passwords that the accounts that they have with a platform like Vessel or a platform like Open API. You understand now? So that's it. So let's continue. Then the root cause was a compromised build or release pipeline for widely used open source dependencies. That means the build was compromised or released pipeline for widely used open source dependencies. So what could have prevented it was a software supply chain verification, signed release notes, signed releases, dependency pinning and monitoring, and those were the things that could have actually what prevented this particular kind of attack. The next attack we have on our list is the ServiceNow. ServiceNow. ServiceNow is a SaaS platform offering service to global audience or global users. This incident happened between June 2nd and June 5th, 2026. Those who were responsible for these attacks, they never made themselves public, or they never made themselves known. They never made themselves known. And harm and loss that was actually what caused with unauthorized querying of hosted customer insurance instance, unauthorized querying of hosted customer instance tables, internal tickets, employee records, and assets and operational data. The root cause were unauthenticated access flow in API endpoint, as well as misconfigured default access control. Misconfigured default access control. So misconfiguration is a big issue with when it comes to cyber aspect. Or say misconfiguration, we're talking about giving the wrong instruction to the right person. I think that's uh that's the best way to give this explanation. Okay, so that's for third party supply chain attack. The next is cloud misconfiguration and data exposure. I think this is a very big issue, especially with cloud computing, or as companies tend to move more from physical data infrastructure to cloud infrastructure. This is a big aspect that companies need to take serious a lot. Although on this particular one, two incidents were examined. So no sophisticated hacking was required, just storage and access control left open. Remember, it is misconfiguration and data exposure. So where you are supposed to, okay, let me explain what misconfiguration is in the world of cybersecurity and ICT. Maybe a window where a house that you are the one who designed it, and after designing it, you're the architect behind who was to design everything, and after you designed to went ahead to build wire and coupled everything, you know places that you were supposed to put events, you placed a window without a burglary proof. That's already a misconfiguration already. You placed a window without a burglary proof. So and you also went ahead to leave the window open. So when, when bad guys get there, they don't need to stress themselves. The window is open and there's no burglary proof. They just jump in and do whatever they need to do. You understand? So that's how cloud misconfiguration and data exposure is is actually what being exploited by these guys. You understand? So unnamed exposure database, unnamed exposure database, uh, affecting global organization, and this happened in January 2026. The harm that occurs was 149 million records, up to 100 gigabytes of sensitive information were left publicly exposed, and the root cause were misconfigured cloud storage environment. What could have prevented it? Cloud security posture management and default deny storage configuration and routine exposure scanning. You see, routine exposure scanning, I think this even a stronger part that, let's assume that maybe by default deny storage configuration, maybe the mistakes were made in those aspects. But routine exposure scanning can actually what expose those particular loophole or those particular unknown entry. So the next on the list is the ID stroke passport document exposure. This happened across multiple sectors and it went all through the first half of 2026. Numerous companies were affected, and no particular since it's no particular person claimed responsibility. Was the harm that was caused? Over 2 million people's passport and driver's license scans exposed across a hotel check-in system, a money transfer, app, a prison payphone provider, and a UK visa service. So those were the harms that were actually what caused. The root cause or negligence was basic, easy, avoidable security lapses, unsecured storage, and exposed servers. I think I used the issue of a house that that has no burglary. The windows had no burglary proof, and the windows were equally open. So nobody needs the hackers do not need to stress themselves. They just need to get there and look at what's available inside the house and take and leave. So that's for that. Then, what could have prevented this kind of incident is encryption at rest, routine exposure scanning, and basic access control audits before storing identity documents. You see, identity document is something that is, very, very important that, we must learn to preserve by all possible means. And, we shouldn't be negligent about it. You see, in one of the modules of our upcoming Stay Safe online course is protecting of of data, protecting of data. You can see it on the screen, securing data. As a company who holds clients' data, protecting these data that are in your custody or under your care is a very big responsibility that you shouldn't leave to chance, because you could be sued if those credentials actually were exposed. You could be sued. So take that our class now. You can see it being the link to joining is actually what being displayed on the screen, and it's also in the description of this particular video. So let's continue. So that's how this particular one for that. So let's proceed to the next, which is the consumer platform and identity recovery failure. Consumer platform and identity recovery failure. I think consumer platform and identity recovery failure. I believe the majority of us may be aware of this. This is the Instagram. Where among those that we have here is the Instagram stroke Meta incident that people lost their accounts because three separate identity and account recovery failure actually happened. People want to send a recovery password or recovery email, and both an email and a message and a phone number for call, WhatsApp, or whatever, to actually send a recovery code to, were different from what they have in their own account. And you know what that can actually be. You understand? So we have about 3 incidents under this category, and we're going to be looking at them the next time we actually meet on this class. I have some emergency to attend to, so it's the reason why we will not continue, but we will continue when I'm back. Maybe possibly today. So guys, do what to like this video and Remember, Stay Safe online course is coming up this July. It's going to be run July through September, and it's just a little box, just $40 to join this particular class. What we'll be covering is, learning how to protect yourself in this digital age, which entails securing accounts, securing software, securing data, securing system, preserving privacy and cybersecurity in the era of AI. So these are the things we're going to be looking at. So do guys to like this video and subscribe this channel, share to your friends, share to your people that they are interested or you want to actually want to protect themselves. And I will talk to you guys in the next one.